Hello there, pipe smokers of Ireland, lads and lasses. This is the Pipepastor now coming to you, semi-live from Fresno, California, on a day that's supposed to be about 100. Yesterday was like 106, and you couldn't see hardly anything. Actually, listen to this. I went outside my car, and it looked like it was snowing, and it was ash. Ash was raining down upon us from all the fires, and they're just so terrible. They're just horrible. And a shout out to one of the young men that I'm a mentor to, Deputy Garrett Majors, who's up there right now fighting a fire with those guys and supervising it. But boy, those guys are something, guys and gals. But we had what looked like an overcast day, and it was just smoke and ashes in of the Valley of Fresno, which is probably the most unhealthy places for you to live as far as breathing is concerned. People that have lung problems like me usually can't make it. My poor daughter Shekinah has asthma. She used to get savaged here because she lived off of an inhaler. But anyway, it was pretty bad. And the heat seemed to be all the more oppressive, coming from below you, coming from above you. Talk about swamp ash. Too much information. Okay, so I'm going to start calling out people in our community because I'm so bad at times in remembering all the names, and I think that's discourtesy because all of these people are a blessing to me. And so I'm going to call out a few today. I'll call out a few next week, but want to just want to be friendly and call them out. So here they are. Greetings to the erudite biker Rob Gardner, preacher biker. Hi, brother. Phil Hargraves, which feels like almost a pastor to me, man. The things he writes, Phil, the things you write to me seem to be bloody with the blood of your heart, man. It's just such an encouragement, man. I mean, really, thank you. I care. It's a blessing, but I get tired of mentioning his name, so he's not getting any other recognition. Shane Burke, Shaney boy, keep fighting a good fight, man. You looked at the devil in the eye, and you're going to press forward, and you're going to make him pay. So all the best to you and your wife, Glenn Whalen, young Glenn Whalen. In a moment of cheer with my son Nick, which he always gets me lacquered up, and then gets me to give him one of my pipes. I gave him one of my Petersons. And the Peterson was a Roeselare, I think you call it, bulldog, flame grain. It has my favorite stem on it, which was an amber stem, but very unusual in the fact that this had a silver fitment that had Celtic engraving on it. Now, you can't find them hardly anywhere, and this was sold to me here by one of the big tobacco stores around. It's a shop. It's Cigars Limited, and they just gave me this freak pipe, and it was just a joy. And in a moment of insanity, Nick got me seduced, and I gave him that pipe. So your job is to locate me another. It doesn't have to be a bulldog necessarily. Could be a bent, but I need a pipe like that again. So you need to go out and find me one. Welcome to the community, by the way. You're doing a great job. Herman. John Hines, one of the fine pipe makers around, man. His briar grain is just remarkable. Carl, our new residence administrator, Roger Lee Thompson. Hey, Roger, you ought to get fired for not firing me. But welcome. I appreciate your grace, brother. Ryan and Darren and Christian Franz Becker, a young man that is just a worldly traveler. He's not a rogue necessarily, but he is a highly intelligent, world-traveled. He reminds me of a ranger in Lord of the Rings. You know, he looks like he's probably only about 35, 36, something like that, but he's really 87. Christian, how are you, brother? Michael, Mike Rowe, Neil, J.R., Michael Banning, Bradley Nichols, Alec, Colin, Valerie, Rob Kelly, Rob Montgomery. You're not on there enough, Rob. Jamie Palo. Jamie's the one that made the ashtrays that I showed you one of them last week. The PSOI ashtray. Awesome ashtray. I got 3 from him. Jamie, you're also you just appreciate your encouragement, brother. And Paito and Patty. It's rather optimistic, brother, for you to tell me to keep a sound mind, but I try. Rob DeLuca, Matt Baker, Nathan Luge. Awesome, brothers. All of you guys. Nathan, all of you guys. I appreciate it. I'm smoking today one of my favorite bents. It's a Tinsky. It's a Sandblast. It's got a pearlized fitment, and I don't know what to. I call this my gooseneck, just because it's so graceful in its lines, and it reminds me of a goose or a swan. I don't know. Anyway, fits well in my teeth. This is my second bowl hole since June 20th. I had my heart surgery. And this is Pete's Moss. And oh my gosh, the first draw, it's like the sweet cherry flavor mixed with that vanilla chocolatey thing that goes on with black gold. It's awesome. If you never tried Pete Moss, go to highlandscigars.com, order Pete Moss. Good stuff. I mean, really good. Well, let's see what's going on. I haven't got anybody mad at me for a while. So, most of you probably have not found this out yet. But at rare times, very rare times, I can be rather opinionated. But it doesn't mean I'm wrong. It just means that I believe a man is a man of convictions, and I'm rather quiet a lot of the time when we're around fellowship and whatever. I'm listening rather than talking, but when I talk, it needs to be something that matters. And things that matter seem to be close to my heart, and I could be right, I could be wrong. I think I'm right. If I didn't think I was right, I wouldn't talk about it. But do I think I am right all the time? I can't possibly be right all the time. But I think I am. In any case, I've been talking about the consequence of ideas. And basically, the consequences of ideas boiled down, and certainly this has happened in my country, America, boils down to a culture war. And when I mean war, I mean it's nasty. A disclaimer once again, I'm going to talk about my faith. And I'm not talking about my faith in terms of what you believe or have to believe. I would that all of you believe as I believe, but that being the case, you don't have to be a Christian to be my friend. You don't have to believe in the Bible to be my friend, or even believe in God to be my friend. You don't have to be heterosexual to be my friend. I've got many friends in every one of those areas that are absolutely and stunningly courteous, loving, kind. They'd do anything for me, and I would do anything for them. But that doesn't change the fact that I pray for them and pray that before their time comes, they make it right with God. That doesn't come out in my conversation. I don't preach to them. They know, and I've already told them, you can ask me anything and I'll give you a straight and solid answer, but if you don't ask me, I'm not going to tell you anything, because I don't want you to think that our relationship has to be based off of you becoming a Christian. I'm not a Bible thumper. I don't even like Christians out in the street coming to me and pushing the Christianity down my throat. I don't like that either, even though they're of my own faith. I don't like that approach. I think it lacks relationship and integrity. Why should you ever believe me or trust me in anything that's a matter of your soul if you don't even know me? So, that being the case, the consequence of ideas is, to me, a fundamental discussion on faith, and a very complicated one. And I'll tell you that in a moment, why it's complicated. I think it's complicated. I think it's very matter of, in some countries, your life. And it certainly has bearing on liberty, law, freedom. But in many cases, the cases in Russia, one czar was 65 with a 6 million, another was 65 million, 45 million. Hitler, almost 100 million if you count it all together. That may be Russia, not Hitler. Hitler's, I know 6 million Jews, but it topped out at more than that. But in any case, millions of human beings, life, flesh, decay, death, cannibalism, torture for pleasure, whether it's the Boko Haram, whether it's ISIS, Islam, or any other kind of regime. Those atrocities began seminally with an idea. And when that idea took form, it took root in that culture and was something that eroded a previous boundary, morally speaking, and got the people to accept some other form or idea that cheapened human freedom and cheapened human life. The outcome was atrocities. So there's a war or a battle, I think, in every generation for the mind and the thoughts and consequently the liberties of all free men, not just in America. And this kind of battle has grown in its intensity in this country to the point where I don't think that bloodshed can be avoided. I'm not advocating it, of course. There are so many coiled fractions that are ready to do violence to those who disagree with them, or to those that they have made an enemy because they have bought the lie that they are victims. That any moment now in America, there's going to be a spark that's going to cause untold acts of violence. And this is a consequence of what we call politically correct ideas. Ultimately, you boil all this down, and I say this as a theologian and as a philosopher. Ultimately, it's a battle as to who is going to be the one that has the power to call the shots. Who's the ultimate authority? And therefore, who's the ultimate lawgiver? Who decides what is right, what is wrong, what's righteous, what is wicked, what is good, and what is evil? Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah, once said that the time was coming when men will call good evil and evil good. Who gives them the right to call either what? Who gives anyone the moral right to call something good as opposed to something evil? Is there such a thing as good and evil? And if so, what is evil to you? And what gives you the right to say so? Where do you get your authority to judge a matter good or evil? Who has the right to put into law what you and I can do and what we cannot do? What we think is an enemy and what we think is not an enemy? How do we know the difference between a false God and a true God, a false belief and a true belief? And this war is being fought for certain in this country based on faith, whether it's the true God, faith in the true God, faith in the false God, or coming from people who believe in the true God or the false God or no God, which is anthropoism, which is when people don't believe in God, they end up deifying man. Man becomes God. Well, her stage of a culture war, that is, the first stage before it becomes violent, before there's either a revolution or martial law that quelches it, and I'm not a prophet, but I'm telling you, this is going to happen in America. Violent outcomes happen during the first stage, or they emerge out of the first stage of a culture war. And that first stage of a culture war is called the semantic phase, which is the fight for the right to define words and ideas of the population. Man is created to believe in something. We have a belief gene. And this is a fight to capture the belief of people. And that belief comes about through words and ideas and terminology and semantics. So it's a fight for the right to define words and ideas so that the population can accept it. There's a man recently converted, or he wasn't a recent convert, he's been a convert for a while, but I posted him on my Facebook page, the video. I mean, he's just a wealth of information, and none of the liberal media has had him on. Raised a Muslim, raised to be a martyr for jihad, raised to hate Christians and Jews, that they were evil, that his highest glory in life is to kill as many as he can and to die doing it. This was his culture. This was his belief. Based on the ideas that were given him since he was a child. From a child, he trained to be a jihadist. One day he gets in an automobile accident in America. He doesn't have anybody here. He's alone. The first responder on the scene risks his life to take him out of the burning car. First words he hears him say is, "It's going to be okay. We're going to take care of you." Ambulance shows up. They put him in the ambulance. He's paralyzed. Ambulance first responder says, "It's going to be okay. We're going to take care of you." Same words. Gets to the hospital, people take him out of the ambulance in the gurney, same words. Someone says, "It's going to be okay, we're going to take care of you." To the point where when the surgeon arrived to operate on him, placed his hands on him, he said, "Sir, it's going to be okay. We're going to take care of you." All of these people were Christians. By his admonition. I'm shortening the story. I'm leaving out detail. I don't know how he knew that, but he knew that. After surgery, he had no means of transportation. He had no place to live. The doctor himself puts him up in his home. They take care of him every day. They pay his bills, pay his mortgage. When he gets better, they give him keys to his own car that they bought for him, and apartment they paid their rent for. It absolutely discombobulated his belief system, and he ends up, long story short, becoming a Christian. Now as a Christian, he's very erudite, he's very intelligent, he's going around telling everyone about the inside culture of Islam. Not just terrorism, but in Islam. Are all Islamists terrorists? Not active. But to be a Muslim, you have to be on call for jihad. And what he said is something very enlightening. He said that although not all Muslims are engaged in active jihad, in violent jihad, the first stage of any violent jihad in any culture is what he calls cultural jihad. Cultural, which basically is the same as semantic jihad. It's the Muslim population's attempt to shift and change words, terms, and belief systems in the country, the host country in which they, quote, have invaded, in order to get to the point where growing percentages of the population are made up of people that believe like them, until finally Sharia law is passed, and then all hell breaks loose for those who are not Muslims, most especially Christians and Jews. And the vehicle, or vehicles, responsible for promulgating this cultural war, this semantic war, is politics and media. So I don't care what political party you especially belong to, they're all crooked. Even the ones that are running for politics today, who are straight as an arrow, once they get into politics and they win the vote, will have to kiss somebody's ass in order to get their bills passed. It's bribery. It's getting in bed with the devil. It's learning that no matter what you told the people you're going to do, you're not going to do a darn thing unless you kiss somebody's ass. And as a result, they never go anywhere. There's this rhetoric that's going on. Nothing ever gets done, but certain ideas are kept before the public over and over and over again, until finally the public begins to parrot those same words and same things. They see it in the media. They see it modeled in their movie star heroes and their TV serial heroes or whatever. And it just, after a couple of generations, it becomes absorbed into the worldview of the children. George Orwell talked about this in his book 1984 as the Department of Truth, which was a department that worked 24/7 to transform what used to be lies into what is accepted as truth. Again, Isaiah's prophecy, good, bad. Good is spoken of as bad, bad is spoken of as good. I focused on two words tossed around today in the political correct, what we call politically correct venue. The politically correct movement in this country has sabotaged so many words it's not even funny. But I focused on two big ones, maybe three. I focused on relativism, but relativism, or what's relative, is basically a philosophy. And the two others being tolerance, and the big idea with tolerance that people, I don't think, really pay attention to, is this. We're going to be a tolerant country. And if we're going to believe we're taking the high road by talking about tolerance, that we need to be tolerant, then we need to understand that the basic definition or the basic context for which tolerance is practiced is that to tolerate you, must first disagree with you. So in order for me to tolerate you, I must oppose you, I must disagree with you. In degrees, I could be lightly in disagreement with you, I could be very strongly in disagreement with you, oppose you, protest, debate you, but not do you any injury for your holding beliefs that I disagree with. Not ruining your reputation, not ruining your business, not speaking falsely against you or in any way disgracing you or ruining your name. Engaging you in public discourse and what have you, yes, but I have to disagree with you in order to tolerate you. There's another word that basically is synonymous with tolerance. It's used with the word tolerance as if they both mean different things, but in this politically correct culture, the culture war here, the semantic war here, is that it really means the same thing to those that are using it. And that word is discrimination. Is discrimination good or bad? Is it right to discriminate, or is it bad? On the street, ask that question, and you will always get, it's bad. Discrimination is bad. It's bad to discriminate. Well, is discrimination good? It's both. It can be both. See, we get the word discrimination from another root word. I'll talk about that in a minute, what discrimination basically means. But we have another word that we use in the language for discrimination, and it's acumen. Acumen. And acumen means mental clarity. It means intelligence, to be able to politely discriminate between two seemingly similar things. Used to be that was a sign of intelligence, high IQ. For instance, having a discriminatory palate, having discriminatory taste. However, when we discriminate based on racial profile, based on gender profile, based on age profile, that's wrong. So discrimination is simply the ability to distinguish between two similar things. Today's Department of Truth, the politically correct, those who have determined what is and what is not politically correct, they've appointed a very negative meaning to discrimination. And they've used it to talk about something it was never used to talk about, and that is sexual orientation. And in many of these arguments, again, discrimination becomes synonymous with tolerance. So now to discriminate, for me to have any kind of bias, is the same as being intolerant, except if it's being exhibited by those who belong to the politically correct side. See, the politically correct side believes that it's their right to be intolerant and hateful and even violent and vengeful because they're victims, and therefore to be intolerant of those who discriminate is justice, which casts them in the role of a victim and places on those who are intolerant of them the role of a perpetrator. Then we have problems. One of the commissioners of a certain case involving homosexual leaders in the Boy Scouts, gay leaders in the Boy Scouts, said these words in combating against those who disagreed with that. He said, this is an actual quote, "We will not tolerate any discrimination of any sort in this city. It is not tolerable, and we will not allow it." Now that's pretty ultimate. That's an imperative. That's a very authoritative statement. Another authority figure, a school board member, said, "In our school, we will not tolerate any discrimination of any kind." Now, that raises up a whole bunch of alarms in me. First of all, who is we? You say, "We will not tolerate any discrimination of any kind." Who's we? You're not speaking for me. You're speaking for America, you're the American people. Who? Second of all, where do you get your authority to say that? And certainly, where do you think you get your power to enforce that? And thirdly, where did you get the authority to say that, to state such things? And then fourthly, who then do you have your guns aimed at when talking about that? Those who discriminate, those who are intolerant, that you will not tolerate. Who's your guns aimed at? See, the UN's declaration, the UN peacekeeping entity, their declaration on tolerance and for dogmatism and absolutism threatens to use force to back it up. So, whose guns are they being aimed at when they make such statements? Because I guarantee you, those statements are being put in place with a particular belief system in mind, for which they have their gun, or toward which they have their guns aimed. Well, this is 33 minutes long, so I got to go. So let me just leave you with this thought. Whose authority are you under? Who is your authority? Are you your own authority? If God is not our authority, and if the God of the Bible is not our authority, whose God is going to be our authority? If the true God is not our authority, the false God is going to be our authority. Who has the authority to say who's the true and the false God? What is right and what is wrong? Basically, if God, the God of the Bible, is not the ultimate authority and lawgiver, then Caesar's going to be. Give it some thought, and comments, please be civil. Remember, I'm fragile. I'll talk to you next week. This is Pipepastor Slanche.